Now our lifestyle, my wife and I, is that we hop from Airbnb to Airbnb, and we're on our 19th Airbnb right now. And we're using that runway that we have, that reservoir of cash, to be able to live right now in the abundant life the way we want to live if we had complete financial independence. And we did that because we knew from mindset training, many years of this, that if you step into abundance, abundance comes to you, right? Like if you step into that mindset right now, then people start picking up on that energy, and that's exactly what happened.
Welcome to the Foundery, where leaders are forged daily. And now your host, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today we welcome Derek Clifford, founder of Elevate Equity. Welcome, Derek.
Hey, how you doing, George? It's good to see you today. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. It's great to have you. Let's get started by telling our audience, who is Derek Clifford?
Yeah, so thank you, first of all, for having me on the podcast. And I am a multifamily real estate investor. I invest in Texas, Indiana, and looking to invest also in Colorado as well. And yeah, I was a W-2 worker and eventually was able to get to a point where I left my job, and now I'm traveling all over the country, continuing to do my work and investing in multifamily across the United States.
Awesome. I definitely want to get to that W-2 angle in a minute or two. So I think you said Indiana. That's an interesting market. It's one that I hear more about these days. It seems like a few years back, everybody was focused on the Sun Belts. And I think a lot of people are really seeing some value in the Midwest. You want to head into Indiana and why you like to invest there?
Yeah, so, I really wish that I could tell the audience that I had a scientific method of me picking the Indianapolis or Indiana market in general. But really, it was as simple as me starting 5 years ago, actually 5 years ago, back in this market, because I met some out-of-state real estate investors in the California Bay Area where I used to live. And they were finding great deals in Indiana where properties were cash flowing well. And at the time, I really wanted that cash flow. I wanted to be able to purchase something and then have it throw off a bunch of cash flow so I could create this passive income and eventually leave my job, right? So I kind of was just following exactly where people were going. And it was really easy for me just to get economies of scale in that market because houses were so cheap then, right? So about the Midwest, it's a very landlord-friendly state. That's one of the things that I really like about it. The other thing is that it's still affordable in a sense that if you're going to start with single-family homes, you can still get properties to cash flow. Although, in the last 6 months and year, that's been changing a lot as you mentioned, George, like this whole market is starting to get more well-known. So investors from out of states, like from East Coast and West Coast, are starting to go there and put more money in. So what I like about it is it's actually this hybrid, unique mix of cash flow and appreciation, depending on where you buy inside the market. And what I really like about it, like you said too, is that there's these Sunbelt dynamics where everyone knows that the Sunbelt is this place for incredible growth. But the Midwest is one of those final places in the United States where it's actually affordable to live. And with the internet flattening out everyone, the ability to work from anywhere, people are going to take their salary where it stretches to be a lot bigger lifestyle for them. So the Midwest is a fantastic place to go, Yeah,
it's amazing. And for those who haven't been studying Indiana, so Indianapolis, roughly the center of the state. I've also heard a lot of great things about Southern Indiana. Any interest over there?
Yeah, I do like Evansville, and I like those places down south. I'll just give you, a quick rundown of what I saw when I was out there a couple of years ago. I saw a ton of interstate infrastructure rebuilds going on, lots of roadways being built, tons of construction constantly in that area. And so I'm a huge bull in that part of the country as well, just because it's kind of taking what Indianapolis has done and it's maybe like a few years behind. And so there's a ton of opportunity in those areas. And I would also say too that Louisville, Kentucky, is also one of those places that's kind of got that similar dynamic geographically. And it's kind of experiencing these types of renaissance, right? So I'm looking at these markets very closely and want to hedge myself and get into them right now while it's still cheap. And then the demand keeps pouring in and then the prices rise. So as you build expertise in those markets, it really pays to know the people there. So you can kind of get this running start as the market becomes more competitive and the prices go up for exit strategies for us.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned Louisville, because I was about to ask you. I like Louisville. It's the gateway to the Midwest, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot to be said for this maybe southern or lower north, upper south sort of area where things just really don't get too crazy, maybe don't appreciate as much. I mean, you're not looking for the same sorts of things you're seeing in the Sun Belt, but that is, say, appreciation wise, but when you look at the cash flow, things can be really nice. And
Yep.
I like how you put it with your buddies. I think you said from the Bay Area. And I feel like there's two different people vis-a-vis the Midwest. There's the people who understand it, and then there are the people who say, like, no, this is what I understand, I'm going to stick where I'm at. But people from some of these highly appreciated areas that understand the Midwest really like it. Yeah, Indiana, great analysis, landlord friendly. Lot of non-landlord friendly things going on in the Midwest, Northeast.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
always talk of rent control in Michigan.
Yep.
It's really, really rough. I mean, that's where I live. I'd love to invest here, and I might at some point, but still kind of focusing on that Sun Belt and that middle strip of the country. So yeah,
I think it's a good play. I think it's a good play, George. And one last thing I wanted to add too about Indiana is that they are very responsible fiscally. So the taxes that they do collect, they really rebuild efficiently. Like, they're very good with their money, and they have a great great programs to incentivize businesses to move there. And that's why I'm so excited about, Indianapolis in general, is because they have very good tax incentives for, more amenities to come towards into the city. And that, of course, feeds into the things that attract renters and then drives the demand, right? So all that stuff is really, really important. I always look at, and I've been following it very closely over the last 5 years.
Awesome, great trends. And I love your analysis of Southern Indiana.
Yeah.
Like, time to get in on the ground floor so that maybe
Yes,
in 5 years, it'll be where Indianapolis is right now. Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot of desire to do that. And it's an important thing to do, right? I mean, we can't all follow each other like lemmings. Not going to work, not going to work.
Yeah.
So let's take a few steps back. I think that you actually started out in single family homes. Were you in the buy and hold or fix and flip? Where'd you fit in there?
Yeah, so I was mostly in the camp of buy and hold, but I did experiment with a few burrs and cut my teeth on a few projects there. But generally, like, I was just, saving up my money. I couldn't afford a house in the California Bay Area, ironically. So the first house that I ever bought for myself was a rental property in the Midwest, like thousands of miles away. And I actually did it with my IRA first. So I did it with one of my, a self-directed IRA account to see how it would work. And then once I saw that it worked well, I started packing away cash as much as I could. And, one of the unfair advantages that I had to be able to leverage was my very high salary in the Bay Area in California. So I took that salary and I was able to save up enough money for a down payment on a house, on a single family house, in about 3 to 4 months. Right. And so that was really perfect. So I just took that money and then just bought houses, and then just kept doing that time and time again. And then every time I got a windfall, like a bonus or something, I just rolled that money back into the real estate business, and eventually grew to where I had about 16 units, I believe, at the peak, in about an 8-month stretch of time. That was when I was really, really like moving. And then at the time, we also had a rental in California that appreciated. We tried out self-landlording. It didn't work for us. And so we ended up selling, and thankfully it was California real estate. So we were able to do a 1031 exchange and roll that money into another property. And it did very, very well. Or we actually rolled that into about 8 units. One house turned into eight properties. Or no, I'm sorry. It was 4 properties, but 8 units. There was like a duplex and a fourplex in there as well. And so it was a really, really cool thing for us to be able to leverage up and see it very early on work for us, within the first couple of years.
Awesome. So then I think you did about 10 single family home deals. Then you
Right.
sort of partnered up. I think you mentioned an 8-plex in there, and I think you got up to a 20 unit. And then this is all like just your first year, right? Is
Yeah,
that
well,
correct?
so all the single families was in the first year, and then after that, we went and got an 18 unit actually in the following year after that. After I was able to stabilize all of my assets, and then I started to get a coach and getting into the syndication business, right? But while this was going on, I started to sell off some of my single family homes and roll them into a 36 unit. And now, we've got 22 and a 29, and we're getting ready to close on another 22. And then there's another an 84 unit that we're looking at right now. So just a lot of exciting things happening right now at this point. And we're injecting capital here and there. We're taking investor funds and we're applying it in syndications and putting it into property. It's just a really exciting process, and it's all been kind of happening at the same time. After I got my runway built with my single family homes and that first multifamily back in 2017, 2018.
Are you ready to build passive income through investing in multifamily real estate? Take the next step by heading to www.horizonmultifamily.com and click Get Started to schedule a call.
Awesome. Let's speak a little bit more about that runway. I believe you left your W-2 in August of 2020. So we're looking on now maybe about 17 months or so since then.
Yes.
So tell us about how you built that runway. How was the transition? What did you do right? And what would you have done differently?
For sure. Actually, I do have to mention that I left my job about 6 months ago. So that was in 2021 when we left.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, yes, the COVID has been something bad for a lot of people, but it's also been very good in a lot of ways as well. So I don't want to discount all the people out there that have, suffered from COVID, because it is tragic, people losing their lives and, the healthcare industry being taxed. And there's a lot of stuff happening with the COVID situation. But for us, for my wife and I, it enabled us to be able to work from home the whole time and give us a little bit of a taste of what it would be like if we were able to live life on our own terms. And so what ended up happening is we moved into a brand new house in California. Finally, we were able to afford a home, and we moved in I think it was we bought it in December of 2019. It was getting built, and we moved in March of 2020. Then, about a year later, right, when the pandemic is in full swing, we're out in the burbs, right? A really nice part of the Bay Area and out in the burbs called Brentwood. And we saw houses across the street going for sale. And we wondered what we would be able to get for our house. And so we called an agent up, and we found out that we would be able to get quite a bit more than what we paid for the house about a year ago. We're talking like $200,000 more. So what we decided to do was we decided to just say, you know what, if we had to do this all over again, would we move into the same house if we had the choice? And the answer to that question was no. So we ended up selling, and we netted a very big capital gain, like over $200,000 worth of capital gain. And we used that reservoir of cash, which we could have also saved. We were also saving as well, but we didn't realize, the situation that we'd be in so quickly. So we used that runway, that $200,000, to be able to buy, properties and keep some back for us to live on our own as we travel the country. So we became unhoused. I don't like to say homeless, George, because homeless has got like kind of this connotation to it, but we're unhoused. So now our lifestyle, my wife and I, is that we hop from Airbnb to Airbnb, and we're on our 19th Airbnb right now. And we're using that runway that we have, that reservoir of cash, to be able to live right now in the abundant life the way we want to live if we had complete financial independence. And we did that because we knew from mindset training, many, many years of this, that if you step into abundance, abundance comes to you, right? Like if you step into that mindset right now, then people start picking up on that energy. And that's exactly what happened. So we kind of had this blind faith where we just stepped into the unknown. We have a little bit of passive income, George, but not too much. We have maybe like, a couple grand worth of passive income coming in now. And we're still working. Like my wife is doing her business as well. And so we're getting money here and there to help pay the bills, but we still have this backup reservoir of cash. And to your second point about what I would do differently, I don't think I would do it any differently than we did, because we got very lucky with COVID, and the home price like jumping up so high to give us this incredible reservoir of like safety and stability for us to be able to use however we want to. And so now, we're basically in full control of our financial situation where we live, and we have the 2 of the 3 degrees of freedom, which is time freedom, location freedom, and we're working on that financial freedom to be able to buy anything we want and live anywhere we want. That's that last piece that we're working on right now together as a couple.
That's awesome. And a totally unique story. Did not expect, did not see it coming. So I'm just fascinated by this Airbnb Nomad lifestyle. I've always wondered what I'll do when I get to my true retirement, which I'm thinking that my house is a little too nice to be a rental unit, but I wouldn't mind maybe turning it into an Airbnb and living somewhere else for 6 months. But I am not ready to even begin to dream of giving up the home. I want some place to come back to, but love it. I love Airbnbs. 19.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you shift your mindset to think about, okay, what do I actually need to feel comfortable? And really all it is a laptop, maybe an external monitor, a microphone for podcast recording, and a camera. And for me, that's all that I really need in order to run my business. That's what's so cool about all of this. And as long as you have an internet connection and comfortable furniture, which is usually available in most Airbnbs in the United States, you can get everything done that you need to do. And at the same time, you're able to travel, you're able to explore new areas. And while we try to figure out where we want to really live, later on, or what parts of the country we want to live or spend half time, split time, in whatever our lifestyle is, we're using this as kind of like a petri dish to explore what it's like to be abundant and where we want to live. And so I think that this is a perfect time to do that, because we're in our mid to late 30s right now, my wife and I.
Right. Awesome. Amazing story. So I think that you're definitely going to inspire a lot of people to take that jump.
Awesome.
So can't wait till I get to that Airbnb Nomad stage. That's going to be fun.
It's very fun. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Then maybe another thing that I'd like to ask you is about how you grew through this thing. So you talk about, doing 10 deals. You get some partners, you started getting into multifamily. Now, was it the coach that got you interested in multifamily or something else?
Yeah, I think that every investor, right, who starts, they end up doing things on their own, right? They deploy their own capital. And I realized that, my gosh, like I'm going to run out of capital soon. And what am I going to do? I want to continue to invest. Like, what if I bring in partners to like help me do this? And so I really was thinking, before I got my mentor, on a small scale, like talking with some of my coworkers and just doing a partnership, right? Like trying to buy property together so that I don't have to bring all the cash up front, but, we can operate the property together and they can bring some cash and, they can still be actively involved, but I'd be helping with that whole dynamic. But then, I got to thinking, and my wife was like, you got to think bigger than this. And there's a common theme, George, throughout all of my investing career, is that my wife, like everything good in my life has come from her, including my mindset, including like, what type of properties to target, who to partner with, what to do, the vision, the team that we have nowadays. All of that stuff really came from her. And she challenged me thinking, well, why can't you do what these like, these bigger guys do? Or why can't you be like, let's go talk to Vinny Chopra, right? Because Vinny was this incredible apartment purchaser. And we didn't know what syndication was at the time, but we knew that we wanted to find out what he did and how he did it. So all we did was we went to his meetups, right? So for all the listeners out there, whoever you want to emulate, go talk to them. Go find a meetup where people are doing things that are maybe 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, and just talk with them, like get to know what it is that their life is like and whether or not, that gels with what you want. And when we saw him, he was all smiles, right? That's his brand. Vinny Smiled Chopra. He's just such a good guy. And we decided to pull the trigger on coaching because we really wanted to lean into it. And, when you do coaching, you kind of like have an extra layer of commitment because you have your money in there now. So it's not just you spending your time like searching around for things on the internet, trying to figure it out yourself. You've got a coach to help walk you through all of it. And that's kind of how we got started, is we took my small idea of, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of cash, to now like, how can we actually bring cash into us? How can we attract cash to us from the outside by building a brand. And that's kind of like by being inspired by these incredible mentors who are doing what you want to do, just 2 steps ahead of you.
Yeah, that's awesome. For those of you who love Vinny Chopra, big fan myself. Episode number 25 on the Foundery. Check it out.
Please do.
Love meeting Vinny Chopra in person. You're right. He is all smiles, and you can tell it's not a pose. This guy is the real deal. But
he really
amazing,
does.
amazing.
He really does live it, George. And that's one of the reasons why my wife was so attracted to him, is because he is in his 60s and 70s and he is smiling and always happy. And he's like, my wife was saying, if you can raise money and operate at that high of a level and be as happy as him, that is the person to follow, because she was looking at not just the business side, but also like the person behind it, because you want that person to be a role model. You want, because you're going to be like working with them very closely. And so you don't want to be following someone who ends up like in divorces because they work so hard, right? Or because they're not thinking about business the right way. And so that was really, really important. And again, I have to thank my wife for really pointing me in the right direction there, at looking at a leader who gets business done, but also does it in a very friendly and amiable and a very sustainable way, like Vinny does.
Yeah, that's all very brilliant advice. Something that I think many people forget, which is you get to really chart your own course here. I'll use a sailing analogy since I'm a sailor. Love to sail the boats on Lake Erie with the family. And what's the point if it's all about money? If it becomes another new grind, it's just hardly worth it. But love the wife angle, because my wife has also offered me some great advice. I don't know if I've introduced this to the audience of the Foundery, but I do remember a similar conversation with my wife. She was a little more direct. She talked to her friend about what I was doing and said, you know what? You tell George that single family is for chumps. And I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about? I mean, you can do really well. I'm sure you're doing well when you had, 1, 2, 5, sure. 10 single family homes. You're doing well. Yeah. But you know what? It really stuck with me, and we laugh about it. She came to my first multifamily meetup, her friend Karen, and you know what? Single family is not for chumps, but this is a bigger game. It's really exciting, and it's very cool to be in this. I mean, where literally one deal can change your life.
100%. And the scalability is there. I'm sure you get this all the time from all the guests that you talk to. But, for those investors who are out there, maybe starting in single families, hopefully they know this. But, once you get to 10 properties under your personal name, that's when most lenders, or at least when Fannie Mae, they cut off the amount of loans that you can get, right? So yes, there's a debt to income ratio thing that's there, but also there's a number of loans you can get before you max out. Now, yeah, there's other ways that you can get around that. You can get portfolio loans with a local bank, and you can refinance them into like a single loan with all the houses there. But the thing is that every time you do a house, right, it's like the same amount of paperwork and the same amount of rigor and due diligence that you'll have to do for a multifamily property anyway. So if you can shift your mind frame into buying multifamily properties, right, you're doing the same amount of due diligence, but you're getting so much more economies of scale, and your books become simpler, right? You don't have like a whole bunch of different entities with different property managers. It just becomes a very easy, more scalable type of business. And so that's what really attracted me to this.
Yeah, awesome. And so I did have it in my mind to ask you, how did you get over that hump? Were you using something like a wraparound mortgage for those 10 properties? How did you sell them off one at a time? How did you move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. We just used, we had Fannie Mae mortgages because they were great. They were like low interest rate, and they had 30-year amortizations, which meant the payments were low. So I could cash flow on all the properties. And all we did was we just sold them off. We actually sold them as a portfolio to a flipper that I knew in my network. That wanted to take the properties, and they were in an area where the path of progress was, and there was a little bit of value add that they could do. So, just as a quick reference here, this is just some of the numbers, in case people are curious. I bought them for $40,000 a piece in Indiana. The person I sold them to, I sold them for about $80,000 to $85,000 for 5 houses, right? So I realized about a 100% gain in a matter of 4 years, right? By just holding these things and operating them well with my property manager. And then, I sold them all as a package. And then I rolled the money, the proceeds into 1031 exchange into an apartment building that I had already identified and I already knew that I was going to do. So that's how that worked for me.
Yeah, that's a great trick, because I mean, they say like kind, but really it's real estate. That's
Correct.
all you really need to know with the 1031. Mm-hmm. So I hope that some people out there who may have a portfolio of single family thinking that this may be the way to go. That's many ways, many routes to get there. I've seen it done many different ways.
Yep. I would say too that, for listeners who have a single family portfolio that want to transition into multifamily, don't be afraid of putting all your eggs in one basket, because it's only going to be in that basket for a little period of time, right? As long as you're doing the right things, you're buying the right property and the fundamentals are good. Multifamily real estate almost always has a better type of, it has a better dynamic in it if you're looking at the same condition from single family to multifamily, if the condition's the same across the two, and you don't have like this headache of rehab to do in the new asset. As long as you're buying something that's relatively well behaved and doesn't have like any stabilization issues, you're going to find yourself thanking yourself to do that. And then, of course, as values go up, right, you get to force appreciate it by making the rents go higher or the expenses go lower with your property manager. And then you'll be able to refinance and be able to buy more single families or buy another apartment building with it. So I just think it's just a natural progression that most investors go through, is you go from single family to multifamily. And I think that the sooner you can do that, the sooner you're going to see the power of it. And the sooner you're going to want to tell yourself, man, I should have done this sooner.
Now, that first larger multifamily, I think you mentioned an 18 units.
18.
18. Yep. So then that was the proceeds from those 10 homes, correct?
No, that was a 36.
Investors?
That was a 36 unit. That we took. So I kept the 18 unit. We still have the 18 unit right now. But we took the single family homes that we had, and alongside the 18 unit, we took that the 5 or 6 homes that we sold at the time. That became a 36. So we ended up having a 36 unit, an 18 unit, and some single families on the side. And now we're in the process of trying to sell and liquidate all these to consolidate operations. Yeah.
Awesome. And then were you syndicating more or less from the get-go, or did that come later?
That came after the 36 unit, because while I was doing the 36 unit and doing this 1031 exchange, I was really getting into what my coach was telling me, and starting to build a brand and raise capital. And as soon as I got some capital behind me, that's when I started to like really network with other operators and started putting money in San Antonio and Austin, because I found a few people that I really trusted and really liked working with. And so I just basically started putting some money with those operators, with other people's cash, including my own, into those to see how it worked, so I could model something successful, right? And that's how it worked from there.
Yeah, awesome. I love multifamily. I like to think of it as that there are two different distributions: single family, multifamily. The quality of the deal you can get, there is a lot of overlap. But if you look at maybe even an average deal in multifamily compared to your average deal in single family, there's just a whole lot of meat on the bone. You've got generally lower expenses. Love to have 10, 15 people living under the same roof. Those economies of scale. So many different ways you can put it, but just about everything is better when you pull that lever of multifamily.
100%. I mean, think about it. You got 8 people living in one building, and you have, one roof, one lawn, and one property manager for all 8 of those tenants, right? Yeah. And in some cases, you'll have one AC system, or maybe not. Maybe you have, different AC systems for each. But the point is that you have all these incredible economies of scale from the asset level down, right? Everything from the asset level going outside of that is scaled. And so that's why we really love it.
Exactly. I love it. Finance, asset level, same property, one pool for everybody, one dog park.
One amenities. Insurance policy, one loan, everything. It's great, Yep.
All right, I got to move on. I'm just gushing about how much I love multifamily here. But before we go deeper into your business, let's talk about your podcast and your book. We can start with your book first. Tell us about that. Sure. Where do people find it, and what does it cover?
Yeah, absolutely. So the name of my book is called Part-Time Real Estate Investing for Full-Time Professionals. I know it's a mouthful, but it's very specific and meant for a specific audience. It's meant for people who are learning to be either active or passive in real estate, and they don't know which route to go or the difference between them. So it's really a primer to walk people through what mindset you need to have, what the expectations are, and how much time it's going to take, advantages, disadvantages, getting your spouse on board, all of these things that no one really talks about, that has to happen before you actually start executing. And so I wrote it for the busy working professional by a busy working professional, because at the time I had multifamily, single family, a full-time job, and my wife at home. And I wrote this book as well, all at the same time. And so I wrote this with the intent that it has to be very visual for people out there who are looking for quick advice. So I have lots of images in there. I think I have over 50 diagrams and 50 images to help like the visual learners out there understand the concepts quickly. And the easiest way to find it is to go to my website and just look under the education tab, and there's the book there. Or you can just go to Amazon.com and type my name, Derek Clifford, and then my book should pop right up. So that's our book. We're really proud of it. Took a lot of effort and work, but it's our perfect way to get people introduced to the asset class, whether you don't know if you're active or passive. That's what we like to give out. Yeah.
I love it. And you're covering some of my favorite topics there, like how to get the spouse on board. Now, I gather from what you told me that this was sort of a soft sell. It sounds like your wife was kind of into it, and she's like, come on, let's, chomp it at the bit. Let's go faster.
My wife is very much the visionary. She's the visionary in all of the business, like in her business and in my business as well. And I'm the integrator in her business and in mine. So I'm the one that's doing all of the, all the underwriting and the contact and the network, but she's there to help set my mindset and help me consult, whether I have an issue, then she'll jump in and help raise capital for me, or she'll come in and help me get team members. So now we have team members where I can actually delegate work to. It's a beautiful partnership that we have working together. And it wasn't always like that. I got to be so involved in real estate that I forgot I had a spouse at some points. And she reminded me of that like real estate should not be my true love. It should be her. Right. And so there's some tips in the book there for some of the things that we were working through that people should be aware of as they go about their journey as well.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I remember some conversations myself about telling the wife I have to spend some time with my multifamily family now.
That's so cool.
She didn't think that was funny.
Well, I do. So, that counts for something.
Thank you. Then we need to spend more time together.
There you go. Perfect.
So that dovetails perfectly, of course, with your podcast, which before we get to that, you did so many things at the same time. Do you have any time management tips?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some of the things that I like to give away right away, that's the easiest thing to do, is time blocking. That's one of my favorite things. And also, by the way, this and many more tips are inside the book that I'm offering, because I thought of that too. Like, as a busy professional, where do you actually spend the time to get yourself involved, whether you want to be passive or active in the business? But I'd say that time blocking is really important. And I'm a huge proponent of time blocking yourself before you go to your W-2 or whatever your profession is. So, let's say that the office and all your appointments or all your meetings, they start at 8 a.m. in the morning. Well, get yourself into a state like where you're going to the office early. This is for back when we were actually driving into the office, right? Like now COVID's a little bit different, but get yourself there an hour earlier, right? So you have the time between 7 and 8 a.m. every day. And you don't even have to know exactly what you're going to do that day. You just have to force yourself to go there and focus on real estate investing for that hour. And I should back up and also say that you need to have a vision as well. So vision, like another reason why it's important to talk with your spouse, and another thing that I talk about in the book, is that vision will help you with the consistency to bring yourself to follow your time block. So make sure you understand why you're doing this. If it's for financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, understand that clearly and picture it and visualize it in your head. And remember that that's what you're working for. And then use your time block as your tactical, actual, practical time for you to execute on that vision, right? You don't have to do anything complicated. You could be going on Bigger Pockets and reading articles. You could be listening to podcasts, reading a book, or you can be contacting brokers or agents during that time, during that 7 to 8 a.m. time, right? The point is to take action during that hour. And if you do it every single day for almost 2 years, like what I did, it's inevitable. You're just going to make forward progress. That's all that's there. So I would say time blocking is a really big thing. And then leveraging your spouse, which we've already talked about, are huge, huge tools to help you get where you want to go.
Awesome. So we'll use that as a segue to get into the podcast, which again deals with some very, very similar topics.
Right.
So this is coming from the perspective of your married, busy, working professional.
Yes. The podcast that we do, I'll keep this brief as well for you, George. But basically, my wife and I, we sit down and we interview people who go through an incredible growth phase in their business. And they have a journey too. They started just like you, at the listeners, and you, George, right? Like they started just like where we are right now or where we were in the past. And they walked through a journey. But what never gets discussed is what happens at home. What happens to your business? What happens to the things outside of the real estate business while you're trying to build this thing? Like what's changing in your life and what have you sacrificed and what have you been going through? And all those things never get discussed on these podcasts. And so we want to bring that visibility to everyone and bring it to be real, right? We want people to understand that success is real and it can be done. And this is what it looks like at home. What conversations were held as the business was going through growth spurts, right? Like what sacrifices need to be made? Like what arguments were had at home? Like, oh my gosh, there's no time for the kids. Like, why is this happening? Right. Or like, what are we doing this for? And you're going to inevitably go through that. And if it's easier for you to visualize in your head by listening to other people who have gone down this incredible route and you saw that they had troubles at home or they had like issues they had to sort through alongside this, or they had to take a pause from the business, that makes it more tangible and easier for an investor, a budding investor, to get started, because it seems so daunting. But once you demystify all of those stories that happen at home, then it becomes more real and more relatable and therefore more actionable. So that's kind of what we work on our podcast. And by the way, we need to have you on our podcast. I know we talked about that before, so we will be doing that.
Awesome. Very much looking forward to it. I love the angle, something I've lived, and really, really love what you're doing, Derek.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So let's get an opportunity here to move into sort of the phase of providing guidance to our audience. Mm-hmm. So let's ask you, what's some advice that you would give your younger self?
Yes. So a lot of people would say, start sooner, things like that. Or a lot of people would say, do multifamily straight from the beginning. And those are all cliche answers. So I don't really want to give that, because for people that can relate with me and my story, I was an engineer by training, right? So I learned to shut things out very quickly. If it was something that didn't interest me at all, I spent no time on it. That didn't serve me well. If I had just learned to have an open mind when I was younger, then I probably would have been more open to buying real estate, like maybe buying a house to live in, because I rented for so many years just because I love the convenience of it, right? But if I had gotten on the ownership side earlier, I know that the gears would have been turning sooner. And George, like, you know how massive it would have been if we had both started in real estate investing back in 2005 or 2002 or something, right? Can you imagine what that would have done? So instead of like focusing on just what I could have done tactically earlier, I think that it's more about who you become. And so I just wish that I had had more of an open mind and had the advice that my wife was giving me earlier on, which is having an open mind, thinking bigger, those types of like mindset pieces. That was what I wish I had earlier. So I wish I had read books sooner, had an open mind to even want to explore these things, but I just didn't, because I was in college and just wanted to focus on studying and, chasing girls and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it.
Fair enough. And I think that I've been on the same journey myself. I know that we talked briefly before this, and that I was a bioscientist, right, worked in data science for many years. And the sort of focus required to make that happen is it's a different approach to life than investing, where you always have to make new partners, new contacts, where it takes several people that you have to bring together to make this happen. You can't just be the technical genius and make something like a real estate deal work.
Of course. 100%. I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah. And so then when I did finally release myself to look at the wider world, one of the things that I started, I would call my quest. I literally went on a quest. What is the best way to reach financial independence? And it didn't come out right away. I like that you're not saying like, hey, just do a deal today or start sooner. You're right. That is pretty lousy advice. You have to find the right thing. You have to find the right thing for you. And just as you focus on the married, busy, working professionals, wherever you are in life. I mean, you might be semi-retired or you might be early in your career and not have a lot of capital. Everybody has a different situation, different talents to leverage. You really have to go on that quest, I believe, find out what's right for you, and then you can make it happen.
100%. I think that meeting yourself where you are and then having some patience with yourself too, right? Like understanding that you're not going to be able to get to $1 million a year just by thinking it, or by, thinking that it's going to happen in like a day or two. It's going to take some time, and it should be an exploratory process, because whatever you do, you want it to be sustainable. Anything that is worthwhile doing and earning money on is done over the long haul. And so whatever that long haul is, you might as well make sure that you enjoy doing it, because it's going to be a long haul. That's my advice.
All right. I love it. Now I wonder if we can do let's do a few questions as a rapid fire round.
Sure.
All right. So, okay. What do you do to maintain your level of intensity on a day-to-day basis?
Organization, leveraging technology tools like Asana, Gmail, using Gmail wisely, and like auto filters for emails, using tools like otter.ai for Zoom calls. I'm really into the tech side, and I kind of like geek out on that because that's what I used to do as a project manager. So that helps me stay organized and efficient.
Awesome. All right. How about the best advice you've ever received and the worst real estate advice you've ever received, or a misstep that you'd like to help others avoid?
Sure. Best advice I've ever received was from my wife. Surprise, surprise. And it was leverage. Finding people to help you do what you do and paying for it. So whether you're starting out using Fiverr, right, for just project-based stuff here and there to like hire people to do a presentation for you once you have the format laid out, or hiring a full-on virtual assistant like what I have right now, that was the best advice ever, and has freed me up and allowed me to build systems so that my VA can follow the systems and help me be even more efficient. And as far as worst advice goes, I would say that maybe taking action, like taking extreme action right away was probably like, I know that taking action is great, but you don't want to take irresponsible risks. So I think that like being in a place where you know that you understand where you're at, and then you're at a point where you don't know what you don't know until you do it, that's where you need to start taking action. So if you jump in, like for instance, one of the problems that I had was I jumped into a partnership on that 18 unit that I wasn't quite ready for. And I didn't know all the people in the partnership well, and it didn't end well. I mean, it's still going on and it's kind of stabilized and it's still there, but the partnership thing is huge. And so yes, it's good to take action, but sometimes you got to make sure you're doing your due diligence and know what you're getting into before you do it. So there's a fine line between jumping in and studying, and you just have to know that well.
Awesome. And I love talking to an engineer who doesn't give me the cliche answer of avoid analysis paralysis.
Yes, of course.
Sounds like you did the opposite. All right. Yeah. How about one more for the rapid fire round? Mm-hmm. Tell us something about one of your favorite markets that most people wouldn't know.
Yes. So let's see. I would say that, well, I like San Antonio also. But I'll go with San Antonio because it's a market where like I want to get more property in, and I'm working with capital partners right now on this. But San Antonio has set records for population growth, and it's also one of the most affordable places in America to live. So that's why I'm super bullish. It's one of the final places of the major metro areas in Texas that's still affordable for investors and for renters. And I really, really enjoy the dynamics that we see there. Lots of growth. And then the other thing I would mention too is that, George, during the pandemic in Indianapolis, in that market, we saw I think we had the highest year-over-year rental rate growths in the entire nation. I think it was like 7 to 8% year over year throughout the pandemic, which was incredible. I love to see that. I was blasting it out on social media because, like, look at this, Indiana is winning. And so that's one of the reasons why I really like that market. So hopefully those two are enough for in your audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm loving all of your markets. I do love Indianapolis, and who knows, maybe I'll be following you to San Antonio soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Very, very briefly, maybe we can add one onto the rapid fire. Sure. Passive multifamily. I know you've done that, something you still do.
Yep.
Give us at least one lesson learned from passive.
Yeah, I would say that, I again, there's a cliche answer here, which is just to know your operator well, right? But I think that the more ninja way to look at this is to talk with other investors who are passively investing and find out who they're working with and triangulate, right? Like, as soon as you hear from 3 different passive investors that you know who are investing in apartment buildings, mention the same operator. That's someone to look at. And so that's something that I would do as well. I'd look at that. And then, if you're an underwriter, go in there and look at some of the numbers and try to understand the business case. I think it's really cool to be able to see, okay, what are they doing here? How are they adding value? What's happening here? Don't just look at the returns and just kind of glaze your eyes over and just say, okay, that looks good. You want to understand what the operator is doing, who they are, and what the business plan is.
I love it. Sage advice. I love that. That ninja. We're going to release that ninja quote.
Cool. Love it.
All right. Before I forget, I want to make sure that everybody knows how to reach Derek.
Yes. So lots of ways. The best way is elevateequity.org. Just go there. That's our website. But you can reach me on Instagram at Derek Loves Equity, or you can find us on Facebook, and then we're huge on LinkedIn. So we love LinkedIn. You can look up our page, which is Elevate Equity page, or just my personal profile, which is Derek Clifford.
All right. Absolutely amazing. So let's close by turning the tables. I'll give you an opportunity to ask me a question.
All right. Let's see here. So if you had to pick a single market to invest in for the next 5 years, for the whole 5-year time frame, what market do you like the most?
Okay. I'm going to pick Orlando, Florida. I've already got a toehold there. What I like about it is we got some solid rent appreciation. It's not too crazy like Tampa. All right. So it's not too hard to get in. And I think that we're going to see some great things for the next 5 years. Really loved getting in there during the pandemic. We got a little bit of a coronavirus discount, and it just snapped right back. One of my favorite quotes from Warren Buffett is that you want to invest in businesses that have solvable problems. And the pandemic was a solvable problem for Orlando. Everybody knows they've got a lot of theme parks. Now, there's a lot more diversification, and I think that story hasn't really gotten out there. There's a lot of AI out there. You're getting out towards the Space Coast. So there's a lot of really exciting things going down I-4, but it's still a huge part of the economy. And we didn't know when the pandemic would end. We didn't know that there was going to be a vaccine a few months later. We closed August, I want to say 10th, and boom, I think it was early December. We had that announcement that there's a vaccine. Of course, it isn't really over yet. But again, I want to say that was, if not the beginning of the end, that was definitely the end of the beginning of this thing. And we're certainly in a different phase now. So people are out and about, moving around. They're going back to the theme parks. And I want to say that I think that Orlando is going to continue that rebound. All of Florida is great. It's business friendly. People are sick and tired of the restrictions, and they don't want to start a business in a place that isn't business or landlord friendly. So Orlando, nice. Florida.
Love it. Fantastic. Thank you for the advice. I've got to start looking for some passive investments out there now.
All right. All right. Well, hey, maybe we could do some vice versa. How's that?
There we go.
All right.
There we go.
Well, awesome, Derek. What an amazing interview. I hope you all check out his podcast, Elevate Your Equity, look for the book. And thank you for spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much, George. This was a pleasure and so much fun. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to chatting with you on my podcast as well.
You bet. Let's do it. Let's light this candle.